Hi everyone, my name's Abby, and I did my project on the waste crisis in Chile. I originally chose Chile because at the time my boyfriend was planning on studying abroad there. He's going to Spain now, but I'm glad that I ended up with Chile as my country because I felt like I learned some really interesting information about a country that I had zero previous knowledge of. The first couple slides of my PowerPoint will give a little background on the country itself, and then I'll highlight my paper a little bit in the later slides. Also, I just wanted to add, if you hear a weird noise in the background of my recording, it's my laptop because it's really old and sometimes it makes strange noises, so just try to ignore that. Sorry. Okay, so just a little overview of Chile. Chile is located on the western side of South America, and it's the long, skinny one, if you saw the picture on my first slide. Its capital is Santiago, which produces more waste than any other area of Chile. The country also has a wide range of geography, including the Chilean Andes, some desert areas in the north, and then temperate regions in the central part of the country, which is where most of its inhabitants reside. The one thing I found interesting while I was researching Chile was the amount and variety of natural disasters they have. It could be anything from fierce winter storms to flash floods and summer droughts, as well as some more serious events such as volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis. Okay, so why is Chile different from other South American countries? Chile is different from its neighboring South American countries because it is more of an industrial country rather than an agricultural one. Over time, this has led to a more stable economy for Chile, and it's actually one of the richest countries in the region. The industrialization of Chile has led to a growing economy as well as a growing waste problem. Okay, so a little on the history of waste disposal in Chile. I actually had difficulty finding information on really early waste disposal, but I think it's safe to say that most of it was illegal dumping until the early 1990s when new policies were instated that led to authorized landfills. Once these landfills were established, illegal dumping decreased, which reduced a lot of health concerns, but there was still zero recycling occurring. During the mid 90s, Chile started experiencing a lot of the economic growth that I talked about on the last slide, which led to a huge increase in the tons of waste produced per year. Recycling and other environmental initiatives did not occur until the late 90s, early 2000s. Groups such as the Foragers of the Environment became active by placing recycling bins in classrooms. When this was successful, the bins spread to apartment buildings, and a combination of this with the efforts of others led to 25,000 tons of recycled material between 1999 and 2005, saving Chile around $500,000. While this was great, in the grand scheme of things, it barely put a dent in the millions of tons of waste being produced each year. In 2006, there was still about 49 illegal dumps in the country. Since then, Chile has come a long way, and there are established recycling centers called Punta Limpios, as well as new and upcoming programs that I will discuss later in my presentation. So like I mentioned earlier, Santiago is the biggest waste producer in Chile, with 7 million tons per year, half of which is municipal and half of which is industrial and commercial. As I mentioned earlier, Chile is more industrialized than the surrounding South American countries and depends less on farming. This results in more industrial waste such as paper, plastics, cardboards, and waste from industries in Chile that I have listed here, such as iron and cement factories or the oil refineries, just to name a few. This content is different from 30 years ago as Chile became increasingly more industrialized and drifted from organic waste to industrial waste. Some existing barriers to a waste crisis solution. Well, currently there are no existing municipal curbside recycling programs, which is a barrier to people recycling. Even though in my paper I talk about the success of the District of Victura's Punta Limpio, which is a recycling collection center that receives 400 cars per day on a weekday and even more on the weekends. This method of recycling requires people to leave their house and takes more effort than just sitting your recycling out on the curb. Also, while recycling numbers in Chile are definitely better than those in the surrounding countries, they are low compared to the developed countries that we know, such as here in the United States, where we have 35 to 45% of materials recycled, and Canada that recycles almost half of everything with 48%. After reading up on the situation in Chile, I think one of the main causes of their problem is lack of organization. If government officials could organize a curbside recycling program, I think they'd see a dramatic increase in the amount of waste that is recycled just because it's convenient for Chile's citizens. I also think the recent and rapid industrial growth has in turn produced and increased the amount of waste, and the current systems in place were not ready for the huge amounts. I think instead of being prepared for the increase and having made waste preparations beforehand, the country is now playing catch up, trying to get a hold on the large numbers of waste being produced by their booming economy. So, solutions to the waste crisis is really what I focus my paper on, kind of a couple things that Chile is doing well to handle their increased amounts of waste production. So in my paper, I state that some of the progress in this Latin American country has been made through the popular and well-functioning recycling plants known as Punto Limpios, widespread education on waste management and recycling in the school system, and by having some of the strictest laws and regulations surrounding waste disposal in the Latin American country or Latin American region. And I just really think it's important to, this is not in my paper, but about this presentation, I just think it's really important to focus on the education aspect because it's important to educate the public on new and current measures available to them, whether that's through the school system or TV commercials and programs or just free public talks and demonstrations. I think it's important to keep the available recycling measures current and with the times, such as a new recycling program called Recycle App, which has been referred to as the Uber for recycling. It's an app that coordinates recycling pickup times and dates between companies and then the pickers of Chile, which they call collectors, so that they can go pick up the recyclables from the companies. It's kind of a win-win-win situation because the collectors receive profits from the recycling, which is their livelihood, and then the companies help the environment and gain a good reputation because of that, and then most importantly, it helps reduce the amount of waste heading to the landfills. Another thing to keep in mind is to reduce and reuse before recycling. As Chile becomes more industrialized and makes its way to a higher economic status, I think it's an important concept for them to consider. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, there has been an enormous increase in the amount of waste produced, and I think this could be reduced if people learn to buy less and reuse more. So just to recap my last slide a little bit, kind of the three things that I focused on for a solution were education, creating new recycling programs, and then reducing and reusing. I think education will work as a solution because programs like Recycle App are already being developed. People just need to be made aware of their existence so that they can use them. There are programs that are not extra work to use, which eliminate that barrier. In addition, and I spoke about this in my paper, Chile has already done an excellent job of incorporating recycling information into its education systems. While education on these options and concepts does not guarantee their use, it is the first step because it's impossible to use a program or implement changes in your life when you are unaware of their existence and benefits. I think continuing to create more options for people to choose from will make recycling more convenient and realistic for people and will therefore increase the recycling rates. And then I think reducing and reusing before recycling will work because if you don't create waste, it can't end up in a landfill, obviously. um, this is a concept that people will have to be educated on, and it will have to be spread along with the current recycling program options through the school system and public forums. So, as far as the future of waste disposal in Chile goes, in my paper I discussed the fact that Chile is really setting themselves up for environmental success despite the new challenges they are facing as a developing country. In my paper I state that as they thrive off of economic growth and become a more developed country, they are not forgetting about the environmental challenges that come with it. They have recognized the need for a solution to the mounting waste problem and are creating collection points, referring to the Punto Limpios, educating the country's youth, and continuing to update policies and regulations to better fit the current environmental needs. And then I also touch on how reusing is just now starting to receive attention and is being advertised by the Ministry of Economy. Um, while this is a concept that hasn't had a lot of impact yet, I think that with increasing consumerism in Chile, it will become a necessary approach to the waste crisis. Okay, and this concludes my presentation on Chile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to read up more on the situation there, all my references are on the next slide, and there's actually some really good articles in there. So if you're interested, those are there. Thanks for listening. Bye.